Here we are together again. Thank you all so much for being here at Unity of Wichita. We especially want to thank our audience that is watching live on Facebook Live and those of you who will be watching later on YouTube. We want to welcome you, and we affirm that you too are a part of our spiritual community. Here we are in the beginning of another exciting teaching series, Giving and Receiving. Giving and receiving. We want to go into the dynamics of this natural process of energy exchange and see if we can glean some understanding that will allow us all to be more conscious givers and more willing receivers. Giving and receiving. One of the things that is true about life and true about nature and certainly in the universe is much of what occurs, as a matter of fact, I'll go so far as to say all of what occurs, happens through a medium of energy exchange. As things are happening, there's a constant flowing of energy one way and a return flow of energy to other ways. And we can think of numerous examples. Us as human beings, as breathing creatures with a respiratory system, we constantly breathe in air, sometimes consciously, most of the time unconsciously. And as we breathe in air, we are breathing in oxygen, because oxygen is a vital life force, a vital element that our body needs. We cannot survive physically without oxygen. So as we breathe in oxygen and as we assimilate it and metastasize it, the carbon that we take in from the foods that we eat works with this oxygen and produces a carbon dioxide that we breathe out. And as we breathe out this carbon dioxide, the plant life and the trees that surround us are fed by this carbon dioxide that we breathe out, as we are fed by the oxygen that's given off by trees and plant life. So that's one example of energy exchange. As the sun heats up, it evaporates some of the surface level water, whether that be at the top of the rivers and the oceans or the moisture in plants. It evaporates it up, takes it up where it's collected into the clouds, one flow of energy, and then the clouds condense, and at some point it gives off water drops that we all know as rain. And if it happens in a very balanced way, that water will go to all the places across the world in a way that gives off the necessary rain and water and moisture that's needed. Energy exchange. It happens all the time. And I could think of 10 more examples. We just don't have time to go into them right now. In the human dimension of living, one of the ways that we experience this energy exchange is through the act of giving and receiving. Giving and receiving are not just nice things to do. They're not merely social graces. Our very lives depend upon giving and receiving, so much so that I'll go as far as to say that if you are a human being that is reasonably functioning, has a certain degree of fulfillment in your life, has a certain measure of health, and you are able to be productive in society, you have experienced a fair amount of giving, and you have experienced a fair amount of receiving. A plant grows from the seed, grows up, foils, germinates, comes into plant life, gets into a full expression. At some point, the plant's life will begin to decompose and deteriorate, and that energy that was once in the plant returns to the soil from which it came. Energy exchange. Even though we're a more evolved life form, our lives are not much different from that. So the invitation in this series is to understand the dynamics of giving and receiving such that we can become more conscious givers and more conscious receivers. To embody this principle of energy exchange more consciously to attain maximum benefit and blessing from it. Now, one of the things that I find very interesting is how our own physiology, if we look into it much more deeper, we can gain and glean insights in regards to giving and receiving. In order to give something that we have to give, it requires that we have to loosen our grip on what it is that we plan to give. We loosen our grip so that what we have can be effortlessly moved from us to the person or to the idea to which we are giving. Receiving is the same way. We have to loosen our grip and not be closed, so whatever it is that we have to receive, it can be moved effortlessly into our possession. And the most loosened grip, of course, is a cupped open hand. Isn't it interesting that giving and receiving both require a loosening of the grip? Sometimes in giving, that loosening of the grip denotes allowing, acceptance, an open heart, which is very necessary when it comes to true giving. Sometimes when we give, in order to give with our loosened grip, we have to extend in order to make the reception more easy or more seamless. Sometimes giving requires that. That extension of the loosened grip in order to give denotes grace. Because sometimes giving is required irregardless to whether the person receiving deserves it. And that extension denotes that grace, denotes that selflessness, denotes that great desire to want to help. And of course, and it denotes sometimes becoming a different person in order to transfer the gift. Same thing when it comes to receiving. Sometimes in order to receive, I must extend in order to receive what it is that is for me to receive. Extending in order to receive denotes that sometimes in order to receive, I can't stay as the person that I am. I have to give an effort to shift, to transform, to become something or someone different than what I am so that I can be in a position to receive the gift, that is for me. Giving and receiving. So our own physiology, if we look into it more deeply, can give us insights into this process of giving and receiving. The Bible is filled with scriptures that denote gifts and receiving, but one that I wanted to speak to this morning comes from the Gospel of Luke, and I think that's on the next slide, and Judith referred to this in the meditation. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This is a scripture of giving and receiving. We participate in this law of circulation or this law of energy exchange. And as we give, and we give we give consciously, and we give from an open heart, we participate more fully, more completely, with more awareness in this principle of energy exchange. And giving is one part of it, receiving is the other. Again, if you're a reasonably healthy, alive, active person, you've done a good measure of giving and receiving in your life. So this principle of energy exchange is all around us, all around us. Now, the inspiration for this series came from one of my not-so-finest moments. Actually, I'm very not proud of this. I'm very ashamed. One day, my grandson and I were driving in the car, and I was irritated about something. I don't even remember what it was that I was irritated about, which is a pretty good indication that it was nothing. Anyway, we were driving along, and so he asked if I would stop at Quick Trip and pick him up a bag of potato chips, because it was on the way to where we were going. So I was already irritated, and I was interested really in getting to where we were going. So when he asked me that kind of irritated me a little bit more. So I did as he asked. I stopped in to Quick Trip, grabbed the bag of potato chips, came out, and when I got back in the car, or when I opened the door, he was sitting in the back seat. With me not thinking anything of it, I took the bag and I threw it at him. And it hit him in the chest. And him and I throw things at each other all the time when we're passing things along, throw the remote, catch it, we do this all the time. So I did it, and then I got in the car, and then we were driving on. A couple minutes later, I looked in the rearview mirror, and he was wiping tears from his eyes. And the instant that I saw that, it hit me what happened. He perceived that I was throwing it at him to hurt him because I was upset at him. And so I immediately stopped in the car, jumped in the back seat, hugged him, and I told him that I was sorry. I didn't intend to hurt you or to make you feel bad. But here's what that taught me. Just because you pass something from one person to another doesn't mean that it's always giving. It is the consciousness from which you give and the consciousness from which you receive that makes giving truly giving and receiving truly receiving. If I take that water bottle and I throw it at Patty because she asked for a drink of water, I'm sure she can catch. But it may not necessarily be giving, because it is all about the place in us from which we give and the place in us to which we receive that makes it all worthwhile, that makes it beautiful, that makes it a blessing. The best and the highest forms of giving is when we give from the deep well of the divinity within us. Because there's a difference between giving from our divinity and giving from our ego, from our unhealthy, unbalanced ego. I'm not a believer that the ego is all bad, just when it's unhealthy and unbalanced. But when we give from our divinity, we are giving from the awareness and the recognition that it is the divine, it is God that is our infinite source of supply. We cannot outgive God. God gives us a sliver of God's life and outpictures it as each and every one of us. Try to outgive that. I dare you. God gives us God's life so that we can outpicture and express a unique aspect of God embodied in, through, and as each and every one of us. And when we give from that place, it's not exhausting. It's powerful. It is sure to bless whatever person, whatever being, whatever idea to which we are giving. And when we receive to that same divinity, and we allow what we receive to nurture us and feed us and feed our divinity. I remember a work situation that happened. Somebody gave me some feedback, but it wasn't intention to give me constructive feedback. It was the kind of feedback that was intended to tear me down, intended to hurt me. So when I saw this, I made the choice in consciousness to respond to them and say thank you for what you shared. I see the validity in what it is you're sharing with me. Thank you. And I'm going to use it as feedback to make me better, whether you intended for that to happen or not. I made the choice to eliminate all the extra in the feedback, take what was credible, and use it to greater benefit. That's how you receive. I'm going to receive in a way that's going to make me better. I'm going to receive in a way that enhances my oneness with the divine. I'm going to receive in a way that allows me to flower more, show up better, be greater, and be more productive. That's how to receive. That's how to maximize this principle of energy exchange in our human lives so that it's not a merely mechanical process. It is a process that gives out blessings and a process that allows blessings to be received. Giving and receiving. It's all about the consciousness from which we give, in which we receive, and doing it from an open heart. Giving without the expectation of something in return, yet knowing that there's a principle of energy exchange at work, and the more in which we give, the more we will receive. Deepak Chopra has a wonderful quote here in regards to this principle of giving and receiving. Giving and receiving are different expressions of the same flow of energy in the universe. Different expressions of the same form of energy in the universe. It allows energy to flow. And as energy flows, things happen. So as long as energy flows, whether we're agreeable to it or not, why not participate in this energy flow in a way that is agreeable to us, in a way that enhances us, in a way that allows us to embody the thoughts that will change our lives for the better, in a way to where we can have more love, more joy in our experience, more peace, in a way to we can be a more flowering influence on the people in our family and those that are around us. Why not give from the highest and receive in the highest and be blessed because of it? So that's what we're going to explore in this series. How to do it more consciously, more intentionally, more lovingly, more passionately, and more joy-filled, and more cheerfully. Giving and receiving. As always, I hold you all in very sacred space. And into that sacred space, I speak a word of prayer. Life, light, and love to you all. I love you. God bless you.